Okay, so welcome for joining us this evening. We appreciate you coming to listen to the review of the source protection plans and assessment reports. We will take questions near the end of the presentation, so you can use the Q&A feature for that. My name is Julie Welker. I'm the source protection coordinator for the Thames-Sydenham region. I'm also joined by Katie Ebel and Steve Clark, who are the risk management officials and inspectors, as well as Matthew Yernig, who is the coordinator of the source protection program for Oxford County. So if there's any questions to a specific site, we ask, just due to Protection of Privacy Act, that we take that offline. If you can reach out to us at another time, tomorrow or whenever, and we will get back to you on that. Okay, so let's get started. Do you see the, oh, yep. Do you see the screen with the notes or with the just the full presentation?
Full presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so territorial acknowledgement. We acknowledge the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, Luna, Pewack, and Neutral peoples. This land is covered by several treaties, including Treaty 6, the London Township Treaty of 1796. Together and going forward, may we recognize our own responsibilities in the stewardship of this land. So everyone is probably well aware of what happened in Walkerton 2000. This is where it all began. So there was a large rain event that led to manure from a local farm flowing into the local municipal drinking water system. And this led to thousands of people becoming very, very ill and 7 people passing away because of this. Today, there's still people who have long-lasting effects due to that event. So as a result, Justice O'Connor put an inquiry into what happened. He provided 2 reports. And the first report examined the circumstances around the tragedy, and the second provided recommendations. And there was 121 recommendations in all, 22 of which were related directly to source water. So if you look at the diagram on the right, he really suggested to move forward with a multi-barrier approach. So looking at the top here, there's the source water protection, and then as it flows down through to your tap. So this is where the Clean Water Act was enacted in 2006. And the drinking water source protection program was established under that. First Nations do have the option to join at any time, and municipalities may also bring their other systems into the source protection plan, whether it's private or non-residential. So when they were developing the program, they laid out how it was going to unfold on the landscape. So they decided to go ahead with Conservation Authority boundaries, because Conservation Authority boundaries follow the water rather than a political boundary with municipalities. So you can see a map here, and it really highlights that there was 19 source protection regions that were established throughout all of Ontario. And there's 22 approved source protection plans. And I've highlighted down here our regions, so I'll just scale down for you. Our region, we consist of 3 conservation authorities. So there's the Upper Thames, the St. Clair, and Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority. And together we're forming the Thames-Sydenham region, source protection region. So within that area, we have 47 municipalities, 8 First Nations, just under 750,000 people, 21 drinking water systems, 21 of which are groundwater and 6 are surface water from the Great Lakes or a river. And throughout all of that, we have Conservation Authority staff that work together to ensure that the source protection program continues with its momentum and working with municipalities. So when we're looking down at the science part of it, here we have a picture of a well. So this is where we're talking about groundwater. So within that building there on your top right, that's inside that building is your well. And if you look at the map, the aerial photo, you'll see the green dot on the bottom, and that represents the well. And then the red circle around that well represents the 100-meter zone. We call that a wellhead protection area A. And you'll see in the vulnerability score legend, it's rated a 10. So that is our highest. So that really signifies that whatever happens on that landscape, if you have a spill of any sort, it could directly influence that well very quickly. Of course, as you move further out from that well, the vulnerability score does lessen, but it just really shows you what's happening under the ground with the ground hydrogeology and what's happening on the landscape. So how fast can things infiltrate into the land once it's, or into the ground rather, once it's in the ground, how fast can it travel to that well? Same for the intakes with the Great Lakes, or we have one on a river. That yellow dot there, that's your intake. And the red circle right around that is your intake protection zone 1. So again, same thing. If anything happens, if there's a major spill around there, fuel or fertilizer or such, then that can get to that intake very, very quickly. So the possible threat activities on the landscape that could really hurt our drinking water, it's been broken down into 3 categories. The first being commercial industrial. So we're looking at things like dry cleaners, auto shops, gas stations, landfills, chemical storage of PCBs and other hazardous wastes. Then on the other side, we have agriculture. So manure, commercial fertilizers, biosolids, pesticides, livestock, grazing, and feedlots. Lastly, residential with septic systems and home heating oil. So how do we deal with this? Well, that's what the source protection plan is. It's the policies that are put in place to ensure that that drinking water stays as safe as possible. So if you look at the right diagram at the bottom, we're looking at the most regulatory, so your prohibition, to the least regulatory at the top. So we're looking at like education, outreach, pilot programs, and research. We do have source protection committees, and they are a multi-stakeholder committee, and they're the ones who decide on the policy type and approach to address the various threats. So why are we here this evening? Well, we're here because it was a result of a minister's order under Section 36 of the Clean Water Act to provide a comprehensive review of the source protection plan and the assessment reports. The purpose of the review and update is to stay current with the science, capture changes on the landscape and/or drinking water systems, and ensure policies remain relevant. So under this act, Regulation 28707 states that the Source Protection Committee must consult with the public when there are changes in the vulnerability area where policies apply, hence why we're here this evening. So what are those changes? So there has been changes to the 2017 Director Technical Rules. There's a timeline change to risk management plan policies, change to the Wellsburg nitrate issue, agricultural policy review, new policies in the town of St. Mary's, and redelineation of vulnerable areas around Shakespeare and 5 Oxford systems. So breaking it down for you, when we're looking at the updates to the table of drinking water threats in 2017, there was a variety of changes, but the main ones were amended fuel policies, where the threshold has changed and the vulnerability area has changed. For us, it only affects Wallaceburg, the IPZ, the Intake Protection Zone 1, and there was no other area that it affected. Also, the liquid hydrocarbon pipeline is now considered a new prescribed drinking water threat. So non-mandatory changes, Source Protection Committee really felt like we needed a timeline for our source protection plans. So an added timeline of 8 years. So this was from the initial approvals of the source protection plan in 2015 to all of the risk management plan policies, with exception of Oxford County. This would require risk management plans to be established for all existing significant threats, again, that were identified at the time of the source protection plan approval. So that will take municipalities to December 31st, 2023 to be in compliance. There was update references to nitrates. Was it considered a possible issue in Wellsburg? System operators there say that's no longer an issue, but there is a monitoring program in place to ensure they're keeping a close eye on nitrates if it ever does become an issue. The ministry wanted us to do an agricultural policy review. So in talking with local farmers and our risk management officers and our officials and inspectors, one of the issues that came up was a confusion with our policies mixed with the Nutrient Management Act. So there was a removal of references to the Nutrient Management Act within the agricultural policies due to that confusion. So we actually created a new policy of application of agricultural source material to land. It's a prohibition and a WAPA A10. So that's that 100-meter right around that well. There was also a new policy for St. Mary's. St. Mary's is our most vulnerable area due to the bedrock. And that policy is livestock grazing and pasturing, outdoor confinement areas, and farm animal yards for the town of St. Mary's only. And that's prohibition within the WAPA 10. Shakespeare, there was update to the Shakespeare drinking water system that is very minor. So we had to report on those changes. And within Oxford County, there was an update for 5 of their wellhead protection areas, vulnerability scoring and threats assessment for the municipal drinking water supply wells. So I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to talk further about that.
Awesome, thank you, Julie. So if you want to go for the next slide there. Awesome. So Oxford County completed a project in 2021 that updated the wellhead protection areas for the Beachville, Embro, Interkip, Mount Elgin, and the Thames-Sydenham drinking water systems. The goal of the project was to update vulnerability scoring, the wellhead protection areas, and the threat assessment for the 5 drinking water systems. The objective of the project were ultimately met by updating the outdated models for the previous wellhead protection areas with updated modeling using the Tier 3 conceptual model developed for the watershed. With that being said, we can briefly go over the aerial imagery with the newly developed updated wellhead protection areas for each of the water systems to show the changes here. So right here we have Beachville, and as shown on this slide, the WAPA that previously went to the north is no longer existing, and now we just have a wellhead protection area going to the southeast there. Next slide, Julie. Next, we have Embro. Embro is a little bit of a shift. And as you can see here, the wellhead protection area has shifted slightly to the northeast and extends a bit more north. Go ahead, Julie. We then have Interkip. Interkip is oriented in the kind of the same direction as before, but as you can see, the WAPA does not nearly extend as far north as it previously did. And it's much more just down to the south. Go ahead, Julie. Next, we have Mount Elgin. Similarly, not a crazy shift, but now we have the WAPA shifted slightly to the east, but it still extends pretty far to the north. Go ahead, Julie. And then finally, we have Thames-Sydenham, and as you see here, the WAPA shifted considerably to the east in the situation in a more northerly direction. And that's the overview of the 5 systems that got changed there. So I'll pass it back to Julie.
Thanks, Matthew. That really concludes our public open house. If there's any questions, Mark, you're welcome to ask in the Q&A function or the chat, or come online to talk verbally. Either way, or any of those ways is fine with us, since it's just you. I am going to stop the recording here.